Hi guys, tonight we drift quietly into the world of the 1880s, out on the wide, flat plains where the wind never stops. The sun is sinking now, and the sky is turning a deep, dark grey. The air is turning cold very fast, and it feels like a thin sheet of ice against your cheeks. The wind is coming off the open fields like a cold, moving river, finding every tiny gap in your coat. You can hear the dry brown grass snapping under your heavy boots as you stand still, looking at the horizon. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here, and if you want to let me know where you are listening from and what time it is where you are. I always love seeing those little snapshots of the world. Now, dim the lights and let the story begin. The world feels very big today. You are standing in the middle of a sea of grass. There are no mountains to hide behind and no tall forests to break the wind. In every direction you look, the land just goes on and on until it touches the sky. It is a lonely place, but it is your home. For months the sun has been hot and the dust has been thick. But today, something is different. The air feels heavy and strange. You can smell the coming snow. It does not smell like the rain of the summer. It smells sharp and clean, like a cold metal spoon. You look up at the clouds. They are not the fluffy white clouds of a lazy afternoon. These clouds are low and thick. They look like big, heavy blankets made of lead. They're moving fast, racing across the sky as if they are trying to outrun something even bigger. This is what the people here call a blue norther. It is a special kind of storm that can make the temperature drop 40 degrees in just a few minutes. One moment you are warm, and the next, your breath is turning into a white mist in front of your face. You pull your wool collar up higher around your neck. The wool is scratchy and rough, but it is warm. This coat has seen many winters, and you can feel the weight of it on your shoulders. It is a good weight. It makes you feel solid. You watch the grass as the wind picks up. The grass is called blue stem, and it grows as tall as a man's waist. In the summer, it is green and soft, waving like the waves of the sea. But now, in the late autumn, it is dry and brown. It makes a dry, rustling sound as the wind pushes through it. It sounds like thousands of tiny voices whispering secrets about the cold. You are a sodbuster. That is what people call the families who moved out here to the plains. They call you that because the ground is held together by very thick, strong grass roots. To grow food, you had to use a big, heavy iron tool called a breaking plough to cut through those roots. It was hard work that took all your strength. But those roots do more than just grow grass. They hold the earth together so tightly that you can cut the dirt into big blocks, like bricks. Because there are almost no trees on this part of the wide prairie, you could not build a house out of wood. There were no logs to stack and no boards to nail together. So, you used what you had. You built your house out of the very ground you are standing on. You look towards your home. From a distance, it is hard to see. It looks like a small, dark bump on the side of a low hill. It is a sod house, or a soddy, as most people call it. It is made of hundreds of those thick dirt bricks. The walls are very wide, thicker than the length of your arm. The roof is covered in dirt and grass too. In the spring, little flowers sometimes grow on top of your house, but now the roof is just a dark, frozen crust. It is a humble building, but it is the strongest thing for miles. It does not shake when the wind hits it. It does not groan like a wooden shack. It just sits there, heavy and still, waiting for you to come inside. You take a deep breath of the cold air. You can feel the tiny hairs inside your nose starting to freeze. That is a sign that the real cold is here. The light is fading now. The bright orange of the sunset has been swallowed up by the grey clouds. Everything is turning a soft, misty blue. The world feels like it is closing its eyes. You see a flash of movement near the ground. It is a small rabbit hopping quickly toward its burrow. It knows the storm is coming. The birds have already gone silent, hiding away in the tall grass or under the eaves of the small sheds. You stand there for a moment of silence. The only sound is the long, low moan of the wind as it travels over the empty land. There is no one else around for miles. Your nearest neighbor is so far away that you cannot see the smoke from their fire. It is just you, the grass, and the coming ice. You feel very small under that big, grey sky. But you do not feel afraid. You know what to do. You have spent weeks getting ready for this. You have gathered the fuel, you have fixed the roof, and you have filled the gaps in the door. The first tiny flake of snow hits your hand. It is small and dry, like a grain of salt. It does not melt right away. It sits there on your dark glove, a perfect little star. Then another one hits your sleeve, and another. The blue norther has arrived. The wind begins to howl a bit louder now, a high, thin sound like a whistle. You know that soon you won't be able to see your own hand in front of your face. The snow will come down so thick and the wind will blow it so hard that the whole world will turn white. In a blizzard like this, people can get lost just walking a few feet from their barn to their house. You have heard stories of men who walked in circles until they fell asleep in the snow, never knowing they were only steps away from their warm beds. You decide it is time to move. You turn your back to the wind and begin to walk toward the small, dark shape of the soddy. Every step feels heavy. The ground is freezing hard, and the dirt is becoming like stone. You can feel the power of the storm pushing at your back, urging you to hurry. You think about the thick walls waiting for you. You think about the iron stove and the heavy quilts. Out here, the night shift isn't about working in a factory or walking a city street. The night shift is about staying alive. It is about keeping the fire going and keeping the cold out. As you walk, you look at the horizon one last time. The line between the earth and the sky is gone. Everything is becoming a blur of grey and white. The vastness of the prairie is beautiful, but it is a cold beauty. It is a place that does not care if you are there or not. You have to earn your place here. You have to be clever and strong. You have to respect the power of the winter. You reach the edge of the small path that leads to your door. The snow is starting to fall faster now, swirling in little circles around your boots. The world is getting darker by the minute. You see the faint, warm glow of a candle through the one small window of the house. That light looks like a tiny gold coin in a sea of shadow. It is the most beautiful thing you have ever seen. It means there is warmth inside. It means there is safety. You think about how strange it is to live inside the earth. Most people think of houses as things built on the ground, but your house is almost part of the ground. It is like a cave that you made yourself. In the summer, the thick dirt walls keep the heat out and the inside stays cool and damp. But in the winter, those same walls do something wonderful. They hold onto the heat of the fire. They don't let the wind through, even if the wind blows at 60 miles an hour. The air inside your house will stay still. You arrive at the door. It is made of thick planks of wood, covered in heavy buffalo hide to keep out the drafts. You reach for the handle, which is cold enough to sting your skin through your glove. You take one last look at the darkening plains. The tall grass is starting to disappear under a layer of white. The night shift of the prairie has begun. The sun is gone, and the storm is the only master of the outside world now. But you are about to step out of the storm. You are about to enter your own little world of dirt and fire. You pull the heavy door open, and for a second, the wind tries to rush inside with you. But you are quick. You step over the wooden sill and pull the door shut with a solid thud. The sound of the wind instantly changes. It goes from a roar to a soft, distant hum. You are inside. You are safe. You stand just inside the door for a second, catching your breath. Your lungs feel tight from the sharp, freezing air you just breathed in. But you cannot rest yet. You know there are still things to do outside before the storm gets too bad. If you forget even one small job now, it could be a big problem later. You turn around and push the heavy wood door back open. The wind is stronger now, and it tries to rip the handle out of your hand. You step back out into the grey light. The snow is not just falling anymore. It is flying sideways. You need to check on the animals. You have a small shed just a few steps away from the house. It is also made of thick sod bricks with a roof of heavy poles and dried grass. In the 1880s, keeping your animals alive through the winter was the most important job of all. If you lost your cow, you lost your milk and butter for the whole year. You walk toward the shed, keeping one hand on the wall of your house so you do not lose your way. Even though the shed is close, the blowing snow makes it look like a ghost in the mist. You reach the shed door and slide the wooden bolt across. Inside, the air is much warmer. It smells like dry hay, old dust, and the sweet, warm breath of the animals. You have one milk cow and a few chickens. The cow is a large brown animal with big, dark eyes. She watches you as you come in. You can see the white steam rising from her nose every time she huffs. You call her name softly to keep her calm. She's already starting to grow a thick, shaggy coat of hair to protect herself from the prairie winter. You pick up a heavy pitchfork. This is a tool with long, sharp metal prongs used for moving hay. You reach into the corner where you keep the extra tall grass you cut and dried during the summer. You toss a large pile of it in front of the cow. She begins to chew with a slow, grinding sound. It is a very peaceful sound. You want her to have a full belly tonight. Digesting all that grass helps her body stay warm from the inside out. It is like she has a little heater inside her. Next, you check the chickens. They are huddling together on a wooden pole, looking like a row of fluffy footballs. They have tucked their heads under their wings to stay warm. You reach into a bag and pull out a handful of dried corn. You scatter it on the dirt floor, and the birds wake up just long enough to peck at the golden kernels. You check their water bowl. It is already starting to get a thin skin of ice on top. You crack the ice with your thumb so they can take one last drink before the night truly begins. A simple fact about these prairie homes is that they were often built right into the side of a hill. This saved the family from having to build one whole wall, and the deep earth of the hill acted like a thick blanket that never moved. Your shed is built the same way. The back wall is just the cold, solid earth of the plains. You can feel the strength of it. It feels like the earth is holding it in its hands, protecting it from the wind that is screaming just a few inches away on the other side of the roof. You look around the small shed one last time. You see your milking pail sitting on a small wooden stool. The pail is made of shiny tin, but now it looks dull in the low light. You make sure to tether the thick rope that holds the cow in place is tied tight, but not too tight. You don't want her to wander off if the door somehow blows open, but you want her to be able to lie down comfortably. The cow looks back at you and lets out a low, deep sound. It is a quiet moo that vibrates in the small space. You pat her neck, feeling the coarse hair and the solid muscle underneath. Now, you have to do the hardest part of the last chores. You have to bring in more fuel for your own fire. You step out of the shed and pull the door shut, making sure the bolt is locked tight. The wind hits you like a physical weight. It is much colder than it was 10 minutes ago. Your eyes are watering, and the water is freezing into tiny crystals on your eyelashes. You move toward the big pile of fuel near the side of the house. Because there are no trees, you cannot burn logs. Instead, you use what the land gives you. You reach down and pick up a large basket made of woven willow branches. You begin to fill it with buffalo chips. These are pieces of dried animal droppings that have been baked hard by the summer sun. It might sound strange to use them, but they burn very well. They don't smell like you would think. They just smell like dry grass and old earth. They burn with a steady, soft flame that lasts a long time. You fill the basket until it is very heavy. Your fingers are starting to feel numb now. They feel thick and clumsy, like they are made of wood. You have to be careful not to drop the basket. You also grab a large bundle of twisted hay. You spend weeks in the autumn twisting long handfuls of grass into tight knots. These knots are called hay logs. If you just threw loose grass into a fire, it would go poof and be gone in a second. But when you twist it tight, it burns slowly, almost like a piece of real wood. You stand up with the heavy basket in one hand and the bundle of hay under your other arm. The snow is so thick now that you can barely see the door of your house. For a moment, a tiny bit of fear touches your heart. Everything looks different in the whiteout. The familiar path is gone, buried under a shifting layer of white powder. You stop and stand perfectly still for a moment of reflection. In this silence, you realize how quiet the snow is. The wind is noise, but the snow itself is silent. It falls and covers the world in a heavy, muffled layer. It hides the grass, the dirt, and the tools. It makes the world look clean and new, but also very dangerous. You listen to the sound of your own heart beating in your ears. It is a steady, rhythmic thud. It reminds you that you are alive and warm, and that you need to get inside quickly. You find the wall of the house again. You follow it, feeling the rough texture of the frozen dirt bricks. Finally, your hand touches the smooth wood of the doorframe. You have made it. You lean against the door for a second, feeling the wind try to push you sideways. You take one last look at the white world. You can no longer see the shed. You can no longer see the horizon. There is only the white snow and the dark grey sky. You use your elbow to push the door handle down. You move quickly, stepping into the darkness of the house and pulling the heavy door shut behind you. You drop the basket of buffalo chips on the floor with a loud thud. The sound of the wind is gone again, replaced by the soft ticking of a small clock on the shelf. You are back in your little earth palace. You are tired and your face is stinging as it starts to warm up, but the work is done. The animals are fed, the fuel is inside, and the door is locked. The night shift has moved from the cold outside to the warm inside. You are ready for the long white night. You stand there with your back against the heavy wooden door, listening to the wind. It is a strange thing to be inside a house made of the very ground you walk on. You remember how the house looked as you walked toward it just moments ago. In the fading grey light, it did not look like a building at all. It looked like a natural part of the land, a small dark mound rising out of the tall brown grass. To someone passing by, it might have been missed entirely. That is the magic of the soddy. It belongs to the earth. When you first arrived here on the plains, there were no trees to be seen for miles. There is no wood to build a cabin like the ones you had seen in books. You had to look down at your feet to find your building materials. You remember the day you started. You used a special tool called a sod cutter. It was a heavy iron plough with a very sharp blade. As the horses pulled it through the soil, it sliced through the thick, tangled roots of the prairie grass. These roots are so strong and so deep that they hold the dirt together in a solid mat. People called this prairie marble because it was so tough and dependable. You cut the sod into big, heavy blocks. Each block was about 3 feet long and almost half a foot thick. They were heavy, weighing as much as a large dog. You had to lift them one by one and stack them to make your walls. You laid them with the grass side down, stacking them just like you would stack bricks made of stone. As you built the walls higher, you left a space for the door and one small space for a window. The walls you built are nearly 3 feet thick. That is why, as you stand here now, you feel so safe. A wall made of 3 feet of solid earth is a very strong thing. It is a historical fact that between the years of 1870 and 1890, over 1 million people lived in houses just like this one across the Great Plains. It was the only way to survive in a place where the sun burns in the summer and the ice bites in the winter. You are part of a great army of families who turned the grass into a home. Each of those million houses was a little island of warmth in a sea of wind and snow. You reach out and touch the wall beside the door. You've covered the inside of the dirt walls with a thin layer of white lime, or sometimes just a mixture of clay and water. It makes the room look a little brighter, though you can still feel the bumps and ridges of the sod blocks underneath. The wall feels cool to your touch, but it also feels dry. The roots of the grass are still in there, hidden inside the dirt, holding everything together. It is a living wall in a way. It has a smell that you have grown to love. It smells like a garden after a summer rain deep, rich and clean. It is a very peaceful smell that reminds you that you are protected by the land itself. You walk a few steps further into the room. The floor is made of dirt too. You have packed it down over many months until it is as hard and smooth as a wooden floor. You sweep it every day with a broom made of dried twigs, keeping it neat and tidy. Even though it is made of earth, it does not feel dirty. It feels solid. Underneath your boots, it doesn't creak or groan. It is silent. You look up at the ceiling. The roof is the heaviest part of the house. You had to travel a long way to find a few cedar poles to use as rafters. The long beams that hold up the roof. On top of those poles, you laid smaller branches, then a layer of long grass, and finally a thick layer of sod blocks. This roof is very heavy, and it takes strong poles to hold it up. Sometimes, during a very long rain, the roof might start to leak a little, but tonight the cold is so deep that the roof is frozen solid. It is like a heavy frozen lid on a box, keeping the warmth of your life inside and the danger of the storm out. You remember the walk from the field again. You remember seeing the tall blue-stem grass bending low under the wind. That grass is what made this house possible. Without those deep roots, the dirt would just crumble away. You feel a sense of gratitude for the grass. It fed your cow, it gave you fuel for your fire, and it gave you the very walls that are keeping you alive right now. In this moment, you stand perfectly still in the middle of the small room. You close your eyes and listen. The silence is the most wonderful thing about a soddy. Outside, the blizzard is a monster. It is screaming and throwing snow against the earth, but inside these thick walls, that scream is turned into a very soft, very low hum. It sounds like the purr of a giant cat. You cannot feel the wind at all. There are no drafts blowing through the cracks, because there are no cracks. The earth is one solid piece. The silence is so deep that you can hear the tiny tink of the stove as the metal gets warmer. You can hear the soft rustle of your own clothes as you move. You think about the tool you used to finish the edges of the walls, a small sharp spade. You spent hours using that spade to trim the sod blocks so they were straight and true. It was a micro-history of hard work, one shovelful at a time. Every inch of this house was touched by your hands. You know every bump in the wall, and every curve of the ceiling. It is not just a house, it is a piece of work you finished with your own strength. You look at the one window. The glass is small and thick. It was expensive to bring it out here on a wagon, and you treat it like a precious jewel. Right now, the glass is starting to turn white. Frost is growing on the inside of the pane in the shape of feathers and ferns. It is beautiful, but it shows how hard the cold is trying to get in. The frost is like the white flag of the winter, marking the boundary between your world and the wild world outside. You feel a sense of pride as you look around. Your home is simple. It is small. It is made of the common dirt. But it is your fortress. While the world outside is being buried in white, you are standing in a place of perfect stillness. You are a watchman of the night, and your watch is beginning in the best possible place. You are inside the earth, wrapped in its thick dark arms, safe from the freezing sky. You move toward the center of the room, where the iron stove is waiting. It is time to turn this silent, cool room into a warm haven. You look at the dark metal of the stove and the basket of buffalo chips you brought in. You know that soon the smell of the fire will fill the room, and the shadows will dance on the whitewashed walls. But for now, you just enjoy the quiet. You enjoy the feeling of being underground while the storm rages above your head. You are safe. You are home. You turn your body and lean your weight against the heavy wooden door. The wind is screaming now, a long, high-pitched howl that sounds like a hungry animal. It is pushing against the wood with so much power that you have to plant your feet firmly on the hard dirt floor. You grab the handle, a simple piece of dark, cold iron, and pull with all your strength. For a second, the storm fights you. It wants to keep the door open. It wants to fill your small, quiet home with ice and grey dust. But you are stronger. With one final, heavy tug, the door clicks into its frame. You slide the thick wooden bar across the middle of the door. This bar is made of solid oak, and it fits into two heavy brackets on the wall. When you slide it into place, it makes a deep, satisfying thunk sound. That sound is the signal that the workday is truly over. It is the sound of safety. You lean your forehead against the cool wood for a moment, feeling the vibration of the storm on the other side. You can feel the wind thumping against the door like a giant hand, but the door does not budge. It is held fast by the thick walls and the heavy bar. In the 1880s, a wooden door like this was a very special thing. It is a historical fact that doors and windows were often the only parts of the sod house that were not made from the earth. Wood was very hard to find on the wide, flat plains. There were no forests here, only a few small trees near the distant rivers. Most families had to travel for days in a wagon to the nearest town to buy a few boards of lumber. Because wood was so expensive and rare, the door was often the most valuable thing the family owned. Some people, if they had to move to a new area, would actually take their door and their window frames with them, leaving the dirt walls behind. You run your hand over the surface of the door. It is rough and uneven. You did not have a plane to smooth the wood, so you can still feel the marks from the saw. To keep the freezing wind from coming through the tiny cracks between the boards, you have covered the outside of the door with a thick piece of buffalo hide. The hide is tough and shaggy. It acts like a heavy coat for the house. You can smell the faint, musky scent of the fir and the old wood. It is a smell of the old world. It is a smell of survival. You look down at the bottom of the door. Even with the heavy wood and the buffalo hide, a tiny bit of white snow is trying to whistle through the gap at the floor. You reach for a door snake. This is a micro-history detail that many families used back then. It is a long, thin bag made of scrap cloth, filled with dry sand or heavy grain. You lay the door snake along the bottom of the door. It sags into the gap, blocking the last of the draft. Immediately, the whistling sound stops. The room becomes even quieter. Now that the door is shut and sealed, you take a step back. You are standing in a small entry area. The walls here are very thick, almost 3 feet of solid earth. Because the walls are so wide, the doorway feels like a short tunnel. It creates a buffer between the wild cold of the prairie and the heart of your home. You notice how the air in here feels different. It is not warm yet, but it is still. Out on the plains, the air is always moving. It is always tugging at your clothes or blowing dust in your hair. But here, inside the earth, the air is heavy and calm. You reach out and touch the latch string. This is a simple piece of leather that goes through a small hole in the door. In the daytime, when you are home and neighbors might visit, you leave the string hanging outside. That way someone can pull the string to lift the latch and come in. It is where the old saying, "the latch string is always out," comes from. It means you are welcome. But tonight, with the blue norther roaring, you have pulled the string inside. No one will be travelling tonight. The world has shrunk down to just this one room, and the people inside it. You stand perfectly still for a moment of reflection. In this silence, you can hear the strange music of the blizzard. It is a muffled, low-drifting sound. It feels as though you are at the bottom of a deep pool of water, looking up at a storm on the surface. You are underground, even though you are standing on the floor. The weight of the sod roof above you and the thickness of the walls around you create a peace that a wooden house could never have. A wooden house would creak. It would groan. It would shake in the wind. But the soddy is as silent as a mountain. You feel a deep sense of respect for the dirt. It is humble and it is messy. But tonight, it is your best friend. You look at your hands. They are red from the cold, and a little bit of dirt from the fuel basket has settled under your fingernails. You don't mind. Out here, dirt is not something to be hated. It is the floor you walk on, the walls that protect you, and the roof that keeps you dry. You wipe your hands on your trousers and take another deep breath. The air is starting to lose that sharp, biting edge. The natural warmth of the earth is beginning to win. The sod house stays at a steady temperature because of its thick walls. In the summer, it stays cool like a cellar. In the winter, the earth holds on to whatever heat you give it. Even without a fire, it is much warmer in here than it is outside. You can feel your skin starting to tingle as the blood flows back into your fingers and toes. It is a bit painful, but it is a good pain. It means you are thawing out. You look at the heavy bar once more. It is a simple tool, just a piece of a tree. But it is the line between the night shift of the storm and the rest of your life. On the other side of that wood, the grass is being buried. The birds are hiding. The world is turning into a white desert. But on this side, there is the hope of a fire. There is the promise of a warm bed. You have done your duty. You have closed the gate. You turn away from the door and look into the main room. The shadows are long and dark. The only light comes from the tiny grey square of the window and the faint glow of the embers in the stove. It is time to move deeper into the house. It is time to leave the door behind and focus on the light. You feel a wave of tiredness wash over you, but it is a soft, gentle tiredness. You have won the battle with the wind. You have stepped inside the earth, and the earth has welcomed you back. You walk softly toward the center of the room, your boots making no sound on the packed dirt floor. The heavy door is behind you, and the long, quiet night is ahead. You turn away from the door and walk toward the middle of the room. You stop for a moment and reach out to touch the wall. It is not like the walls you might find in a city house. It is not thin wood or cold stone. This wall is nearly 3 feet thick. You can spread your arms wide, and the wall would still be thicker than the space between your hands. It is made of hundreds of sod bricks, stacked one on top of the other, with the grass side facing down. As you run your fingers over the surface, you can feel the bumps and ridges where one block ends and another begins. The surface of the wall is not just bare dirt. You have spent a lot of time making this place feel like a proper home. A historical fact about these houses is that many families would cover their dirt walls with a mixture called whitewash. This was a thin, watery paint made from lime and water. You used a big, shaggy brush to put it on, and now the walls are a soft, creamy white color. It is not perfect. In some places, the dark earth shows through like a shadow, and in other places, the lime has dried into little flakes, but it makes the room feel much larger. Without the whitewash, the room would be as dark as a tunnel. Now, even the tiny bit of light from the window reflects off the walls, giving the room a gentle glow. You lean your shoulder against the wall. It feels as solid as a hill. In fact, it is a hill. You are standing inside a pile of earth that has been reshaped by your own hands. You think about the strength of this wall. Out on the prairie, the wind can be a terrible thing. It can pick up small wooden buildings and toss them aside. It can rip the shingles off a roof and turn a barn into a pile of sticks. But the wind cannot move your house. It cannot even make it shake. The earth is too heavy. It is too rooted. You feel like a tiny seed tucked deep inside the soil, waiting for the spring. Nothing can reach you here. As you look closer at the wall, you see a small piece of something sticking out from the whitewash. It is a long, dry root of prairie grass. You reach out and touch it with your thumb. It is tough and wiry. This is a microhistory detail that you know well, the roots of the bluestem grass. These roots are the secret to why the house stays together. They are like thousands of tiny, natural pieces of string that tie the dirt into a solid knot. Even though the grass is no longer growing, The roots stay strong for many years. They hold the earth so tightly that you could not pull a brick apart with your bare hands. You have to use a sharp axe or a spade to cut through them. You move your hand along the wall until you reach a corner. The corners are rounded and soft, not sharp like a modern building. It gives the room a cozy, organic feel. You notice how the wall feels to your skin. It is cool, but it is not freezing. The earth is a wonderful thing because it is a natural blanket. It takes a long time for the heat of the sun to sink into the dirt, and it takes a long time for the cold of the winter to find its way through. Right now, the frost is biting at the outside of the wall, but it hasn't made it halfway through yet. The inside of the wall is still holding on to the memory of the autumn sun. You stand perfectly still for a moment of reflection. The room is so quiet that you can hear the slow, steady rhythm of your own breathing. You listen for the storm again. You know it is there. You know the snow is piling up against the outside of your house. But in here, there is only silence. It is a deep, heavy silence that you can almost feel on your skin. It is the silence of the deep earth. It makes you feel very calm. All the worries of the day, the broken fence, the dry well, the long walk, all of those things feel very far away. In this silence, you are just a person in a room, safe and still. You look at the walls and think about how they were made. You remember the hot sun on your back as you lifted the heavy sod blocks. You remember how the dirt got under your fingernails and into the creases of your skin. You remember the smell of the fresh-turned earth, which smelled like life and hope. It was hard work, the kind of work that makes your muscles ache and your breath come in short gasps. But as you look at the white walls now, you know it was worth it. Every block you lifted is now a shield between you and the blizzard. Every root you cut is now part of your protection. You see a shelf that you built into the wall. Because the walls are so thick, you didn't have to build a cupboard. You simply used a sharp knife to hollow out a square hole in the dirt, and then lined it with a few thin boards. On the shelf sits a few precious things. There is a small tin of tea, a wooden bowl, and a photograph of your mother and father back east. The photograph is in a small wooden frame, and it looks very grand against the simple whitewash. You touch the frame with a gentle finger. Your parents live in a house made of bricks and glass, with streets and shops nearby. They would find it hard to believe that you are living inside the ground, but they are not here to see the blue norther. They do not know how kind the earth can be when the world turns to ice. You walk along the perimeter of the room. The floor meets the wall in a smooth curve. You have packed the dirt down so well that it is almost shiny. You have even used a little bit of water and a flat stone to iron the floor, making it hard and dust-free. You feel the weight of the house all around you. It is a good weight. It is the weight of the world, and it is holding you close. You realize that you don't need a tall castle or a big mansion to be happy. You just need 3 feet of earth and a roof that stays put. The whitewash in the walls has a very faint smell. It smells a bit like chalk and old rain. It is a clean smell that hides the damp scent of the dirt. You look up at the ceiling where the walls meet the rafters. You have tucked old newspapers into the small gaps where the roof poles sit. This keeps the dust from falling down on your bed. Sometimes, when it is very quiet, you can read the old headlines from the papers. They talk about things that happened months ago, in places you will never visit. But those stories don't matter much tonight. The only story that matters is the one happening right here, inside these 4 thick walls. You feel a sense of peace as you finish your walk around the room. The walls are your friends. They are your guardians. They don't ask for anything, and they don't break. They just stand there, heavy and silent, doing their job. You turn your back to the wall and look toward the center of the room again. The cold is starting to creep in from the floor, and you know it is time to light the fire. But you take one last look at the whitewashed dirt. You are thankful for the grass and the roots. You are thankful for the heavy, honest earth. You are ready for the night. You walk slowly toward the center of the small room. Sitting there, like a heavy black king on a throne, is your cast iron stove. It is the most important thing you own. In a house made of dirt, this piece of metal is the heart that keeps everything alive. It is made of thick, dark iron that has been polished until it has a soft, dull shine. It sits on a large, flat piece of stone that you found near the river and hauled home in your wagon. The stone is there to catch any stray sparks and to keep the heat from drying out the dirt floor too much. You reach out and touch the top of the stove. The metal is very cold right now. It feels like touching a block of ice. It is a big, boxy thing with 4 short, sturdy legs. The legs are shaped like the paws of a lion, with little metal claws that grip the stone. This was a common style in the 1880s. People liked to have a bit of beauty in their tools, even out here on the lonely prairie. The stove has a large door on the front with a small handle that you have to turn to open the firebox. Above the door, there is a flat surface where you do all your cooking. There are round metal plates that fit into holes on the top. A simple historical fact about these stoves is that they were the most expensive and heaviest things a settler family owned. Most people brought them all the way from the big cities in the east. They had to be carried in a wooden wagon for hundreds of miles. Because they were so heavy, sometimes weighing as much as 3 grown men, they were the first thing unloaded when a family reached their new land. Before the walls were even built, the stove would be sitting on the grass waiting to be moved inside. For many families, the stove was the center of their world before they even had a roof over their heads. You look at the side of the stove. There is a name pressed into the metal in big, bold letters. It says, "The Prairie Queen." You like that name? It makes the stove feel like a person, a friend who is here to help you fight the winter. You see the damper, which is a small metal handle on the side that you can slide back and forth. This controls how much air goes into the fire. If you open it wide, the fire burns fast and hot. If you close it, the fire slows down and lasts through the night. It is a clever bit of work, and you have learned exactly how to use it to keep the room at just the right temperature. Next to the stove, hanging on a small nail, is a micro-history detail you use every single day. The stove lifter. This is a short, curved piece of iron with a hook on one end and a handle on the other. Because the metal plates on top of the stove get too hot to touch, you use this hook to lift them up so you can add fuel to the fire or clean out the ash. The handle of the lifter is worn smooth from your grip. It is a simple tool, but without it, you would burn your fingers every time you wanted to make a cup of tea. You pick it up now feeling the cold weight of the iron in your palm. It makes a small metallic clink as it hits the side of the stove. You open the main door of the stove. It creaks just a little bit, a sound you have heard thousands of times. Inside, it is dark and empty, except for a few grey ashes left over from this morning. You use a small metal shovel to scoop the ashes into a bucket. You have to be careful not to make a cloud of dust. The ash is soft and light, like grey flour. You will save this ash later to make soap, as nothing on the prairie is ever wasted. Every little thing has a use. You stand perfectly still for a moment of reflection. The room is very dim now. The only light comes from the small frosted window, and it is a pale, ghostly blue. You look at the stove and the long black pipe that goes from the back of it up through the roof. The pipe is the only way for the smoke to escape. You think about how quiet the stove is when it is cold. It is just a big, heavy object. But you know that in a few minutes it will be full of life. It will be popping and hissing. It will be breathing out heat that you can feel on your skin from across the room. You feel a strange sense of respect for this machine. It is your shield against the blizzard. Without it, the thick dirt walls would just be a cold cave. With it, they are a home. You run your hand along the flat cooking surface. You remember the smell of frying bacon and the sound of a bubbling pot of beans. This stove has cooked every meal you have eaten since you arrived here. It has dried your wet socks after a day in the snow. It has warmed your hands when they were so cold you couldn't move your fingers. It is a faithful servant. Even though it is made of cold, hard iron, it feels like the warmest thing in the house. You notice how the black color of the stove stands out against the whitewashed walls. It looks like a shadow that has taken a solid shape. You think about the men who made this stove in a factory far away. They probably never saw the Great Plains. They probably never lived in a house made of dirt. But they built this thing to be strong. They used thick bolts and heavy plates because they knew that people out here would depend on it for their very lives. You are glad they did their work well. You can see the small cracks in the metal where the heat has expanded it over time, but it is still solid. It is still the queen of the room. You look at the legs of the stove again. They look so small compared to the big, heavy body they have to hold up, but they are made of the same strong iron. They don't bend, and they don't break. They keep the hot belly of the stove off the ground, making sure the heat doesn't cause any trouble. You reach down and touch the stone base. It is cold now, but soon it will be warm too. The stone will hold the heat long after the fire goes out. Acting like a little radiator for your feet, you take a deep breath. The air inside the house is still very chilly. You can see your breath in the dim light, a small puff of white mist that vanishes into the shadows. You know you cannot wait much longer. The cold is starting to settle into the corners of the room. It is time to stop looking at the stove and start using it. You feel a little spark of excitement. Lighting the first fire of a big storm is always a special moment. It is the moment you officially win the first round against the winter. You reach for the basket of fuel you brought in earlier. You look at the black iron door, waiting for the first flame to turn it from a cold box into a glowing heart. The night shift is moving along, and the heart of your home is ready to beat. You take the lifter and pull off one of the round plates on top. The dark hole of the firebox looks back at you, waiting. You are ready to bring the warmth back to the prairie. You reach down into the large woven basket you brought inside. Your hand brushes against the first of your fuel, the buffalo chips. To someone from the city, these might seem like nothing more than waste, but to you, they are a treasure. On the Great Plains in the 1880s, wood was a luxury the few could afford. There were no forests to chop down, and the few trees that grew near the creeks were saved for building roofs or tool handles. You had to look to the great herds that once roamed these lands to find a way to stay warm. A simple historical fact about the prairie is that millions of buffalo lived here for thousands of years. As they moved across the grass, they left behind droppings that the hot summer sun baked into hard, dry cakes. By the time you find them, they have no smell of waste at all. They've been cleaned by the wind and dried by the sun until they are light and firm. Settlers called them prairie coal because they were the most reliable fuel available. Without them, thousands of families would have been forced to leave their land during the first winter. Gathering them was a daily chore for every member of the family, from the smallest child to the oldest grandparent. You pick up a large chip and feel its texture. It is rough, like a piece of very thick dry cardboard. It is surprisingly light in your hand. You can see the tiny bits of dried grass and stems held inside it, crushed together by the weight of the animal and the passage of time. It is a humble thing, but it is honest. It is the circle of life in your hand. The grass fed the buffalo left the chip, and now the chip will keep you warm, so you can plant more grass in the spring. You begin to stack the chips inside the dark firebox of the stove. You don't just toss them in, you arrange them carefully. You place 2 chips side by side on the bottom, then place another across them to leave a small gap for air. Fire needs to breathe just like a person does. If you pack it too tight, the flame will choke and go out. You feel the cold iron of the stove against your knuckles as you work. The metal is still biting, but you know that won't last long. A specific microhistory detail of your fuel is the chip scout. This was a small, flat piece of wood or metal used to flip the chips over during the summer months to make sure they dried evenly on both sides. You remember spending hours in the late August heat, walking through the tall blue stem with your scout, making sure your winter supply was perfect. You would stack the dried chips into big piles called ricks and cover them with a bit of old sod to keep the rain off. Every chip you put into the stove tonight is a memory of those long golden days under the hot sun. You continue to fill the stove. You add a few more chips, building a small tower of fuel. You notice a bit of dust on your fingers, a fine grey powder that smells like old earth. You wipe it off on your apron. Out here, you learn that nothing is truly rubbish. Everything has a value if you are clever enough to find it. You think about the people back in the big cities who burn coal from deep mines or wood from ancient forests. They might look down on your prairie coal, but they aren't here tonight. They don't know the feeling of safety that these dry cakes provide. You stand perfectly still for a moment of reflection. The only sound in the room is the distant, muffled thump of the wind against the thick dirt walls. The air inside the soddy is very still. You look at the stack of fuel you have built. It is a small, simple pile, but it represents hours of walking and gathering. It is your insurance against the frost. You feel a sense of quiet pride in your own hard work. You didn't buy this warmth. You found it. You gathered it with your own hands from the face of the earth. In this silence, you feel a deep connection to the land. You are not just living on the prairie. You are living with it. You look at the basket again. It is still half full. You know you will have to keep adding chips every hour or so once the fire is going. They burn with a steady, low flame that doesn't pop or spark like wood does. They produce a very fine, white ash that stays hot for a long time. You like the smell of a chip fire. It doesn't sting your eyes or make you cough. It has a sweet, grassy scent, like a memory of a summer meadow. It is a gentle heat, perfect for a small house made of earth. You reach into the corner of the basket and pull out a few smaller pieces. The kindling. These are broken bits of chips and tiny twigs you saved from the creek bed. You tuck them into the gaps of your stack. You want the fire to catch quickly. The cold is starting to seep through your heavy wool socks, and you can feel the chill of the dirt floor rising up through your boots. You are almost ready to strike the match. You think about the buffalo themselves. You haven't seen a real herd in a long time. They have moved further west, or they have vanished into the stories of the old-timers. But they left this gift behind for you. It is as if the great animals are still looking after the people on the plains, even though they are gone. You feel a small flicker of gratitude for the shaggy beasts. Their strength is now inside your fuel basket, waiting to be turned into light and heat. You take one last look at the arrangement inside the stove. It is a sturdy little structure. You have left enough room at the front for your twisted hay logs, which you will use to get the fire started. The buffalo chips are the main meal for the fire, but they need a little help to get going. They are slow to start, but they last a long time. Just like the people who live in sod houses, they are tough and they don't give up easily. You reach for the small tin box on the shelf where you keep your matches. Your fingers are still a bit stiff, and the tin makes a sharp click as you open it. You see the small red-tipped sticks lying in a row. They are precious, and you don't want to waste a single one. You take one out and hold it between your thumb and finger. The night shift is about to change. The cold, dark iron is about to become a source of life. You look at your stack of prairie coal one last time. Then you reach for the hay. The moment of warmth is almost here. You take a deep breath, and the cold air hitches slightly in your chest. Your fingers are clumsy, but you manage to strike the match against the rough side of the small tin box. There is a sharp scritch sound, and then a tiny bright flare of yellow and orange light fills the dim space. For a moment, it is the only light in the house. You hold the match carefully, shielding it with your palm, and lean down toward the open door of the stove. You touch the flame to the dry, frayed ends of the hay logs you placed at the bottom. The hay is so dry it seems to gasp as it catches. A tiny blue flame licks upward, turning orange as it finds more to eat. The fire is small at first, no bigger than a gold coin. You watch it with your heart in your throat, hoping it won't flicker out. But the hay is good. It is the dry grass of the summer, and it wants to burn. The flame spreads, running along the twisted knots of grass like a liquid. Soon, the small gap you left for air begins to work. You hear a soft whoosh as the stove starts to draw in the oxygen from the room. The fire grows bigger, reaching up to touch the edges of the buffalo chips you stack so carefully. A historical fact about life in a soddy is that the fire was almost never allowed to go out during the winter months. Matches were expensive, and starting a fire from nothing in a freezing room was a difficult chore. Most families would bank the fire at night, covering the glowing embers with a thick layer of ash to keep them alive until morning. But tonight, because the blue norther came on so fast while you were finishing the chores, you are starting fresh. This first flame is a very important thing. It is the victory of heat over the ice. You watch as the orange light begins to dance on the whitewashed walls of the room. The shadows of the table and the bed start to move, swaying back and forth as the fire grows stronger. The buffalo chips are starting to catch now. They don't flare up like wood. Instead, they start to glow a deep, angry red. A thin ribbon of sweet, grassy smoke rises and is pulled quickly up the black stovepipe. You can hear the metal of the stove start to make tiny tink-tink-tink sounds. That is the sound of the iron expanding as it gets warm. It is the stove waking up. A micro-history detail of the 1880s kitchen was the use of a fire fanner. Since you didn't have bellows like a blacksmith might have, you used a simple piece of stiff cardboard or an old leather fan to gently push air into the base of the stove. You pick up your fanner, now a piece of dried hide stretched over a willow frame, and give it 2 or 3 slow, steady waves. The embers brighten from a dull orange to a brilliant, sparkling white. The heat is becoming real now. You can feel it on the skin of your face. It feels like the first touch of the sun after a long, dark night. You lean back on your heels, watching the fire. The flames are licking around the chips, turning the rough edges into glowing coals. You see a small spark pop and land on the stone base below the stove, where it quickly fades away. The room is still cold, but the heart is beating. You can feel the air around the stove starting to move. The cold air from the corners of the room is being drawn toward the heat, and the warm air is starting to rise toward the sod ceiling. You stand perfectly still for a moment of reflection. The silence of the house has changed. It is no longer a heavy, dead silence. Now it is filled with the soft, friendly sounds of the fire. You hear the crackle of a dry stem snapping in the heat. You hear the low, steady rumble of the air moving through the chimney pipe. It sounds like a large, gentle animal. breathing in the room with you. You look at the orange light reflecting in the one small window. The frost on the glass is blowing now, looking like diamonds stuck to the pane. The storm is still out there, but the fire has pushed it back. You reach out and touch the handle of the stove door. It is no longer ice cold. It is starting to feel lukewarm. You give the fire one last look, making sure the buffalo chips are settled and burning well. Then you gently push the heavy iron door shut. The clack of the latch sounds very final. Now the fire is locked away in its iron cage, where it can do its work safely. You turn the damper on the side of the stove just a little bit, slowing the air down so the fuel will last longer. The heat is starting to spread. You move your hands close to the top of the stove, not touching it, but letting your fingers soak up the warmth. The numbness in your knuckles is starting to go away, replaced by a warm, tingly feeling. You feel a great sense of relief. As long as the fire is burning, the house is a home. You look around the room and it looks different now. The white walls are warm and gold. The dirt floor looks soft. The shadows in the corners are no longer scary. They're just cozy blankets of darkness. You think about how many people across the plains are doing this exact same thing at this exact same moment. At 1,000 different soddies, 1,000 different fires are being lit. Each one is a tiny point of light in the middle of a massive, dark blizzard. It makes you feel connected to your neighbors. Even though you cannot see them, you are all part of the same night shift, tending the flames and waiting for the morning. You see the steam starting to rise from your boots as the snow on them melts. You smell the wet wool of your trousers and the sweet earthy scent of the burning chips. It is a good smell. It is the smell of a place where life is winning. You take a deep breath and let it out slowly. Your breath is no longer a white mist. The air is warm enough now that your breath is invisible. You have done it. The first flame has become a steady fire. You look at the big black stove and feel a surge of gratitude. It is a simple machine, but it is doing something amazing. It is turning dry grass and old dirt into the very thing you need to stay alive. You feel the warmth reaching your toes now, even through the thick socks. You are ready to stop working for a moment and just be. You are ready to let the fire take over the heavy lifting. You stand there for a long time, just watching the orange light peek through the small cracks in the stove door, feeling the peace of the prairie night. The fire is settling into a steady rhythm now, but you know that the buffalo chips need a partner to keep the heat high. You reach into the corner where you keep your supply of twisted hay. This was one of the most important jobs of the late summer and autumn. On the Great Plains, where there are no forests, hay is more than just food for the cow. It is the wood of the prairie. You pick up one of the logs. It is a thick, tight braid of grass, about the length of your forearm and as thick as your wrist. You spent many long evenings sitting by the door, twisting this grass until your palms were calloused and green from the juice of the stems. A simple historical fact about the 1880s is that hay burning was so common that many people invented special machines to twist the grass into these tight knots. If you just threw a loose handful of hay into the stove, it would flare up in a second and be gone, leaving no heat behind. But when you twist it tightly, the air cannot get to the center of the bundle so easily. This makes it burn slowly and steadily, almost like a branch from an oak tree. It was a clever way to turn a field of grass into a pile of firewood. You hold the hay log in your hands for a moment. It is surprisingly heavy when it is packed so tight. The grass is dry and golden, and it has a sweet, dusty smell that reminds you of the harvest. You open the stove door again, and the heat from the burning buffalo chips hits you in the face. It is a strong, dry heat. You slide the hay log into the firebox, placing it right on top of the glowing red chips. The grass begins to smoke immediately, a thin white trail that smells like a summer campfire. Then, with a soft pop, the hay catches fire. A micro-history detail you remember well is the tucking technique. To make the hay logs last even longer, you would sometimes soak the very ends of the twisted grass in a little bit of water or grease. This would make the fire start in the middle and work its way out slowly. You look at the log you just added. You have tucked the ends in tight so that the flame has to work hard to find a way inside. This one log will burn for 20 minutes, giving off a bright, cheerful light that fills the room. You add 2 more hay logs, stacking them like a little cabin. The stove is starting to roar now. It is a low, deep sound, like a large drum being played far away. This is the draught, the sound of the air being sucked up through the pipe. You feel a sense of satisfaction. You have built a good fire. It has the steady, long-lasting heat of the buffalo chips and the bright, hot flame of the hay. Together, they are making the iron of the stove glow a very faint, dull red in the shadows. You stand perfectly still for a moment of reflection. In the silence between the gusts of wind, you can hear the haylogs singing. As the heat hits the trapped air inside the twisted grass, it makes tiny whistling and hissing sounds. It sounds like 1,000 tiny flutes playing at once. You watch the way the orange light spills out of the air vents in the stove door. It creates a pattern of golden dots on the dirt floor. You realize that out here, you have to make everything you need. You made the house from the dirt, and you made the wood from the grass. It makes you feel very strong and capable. You close the stove door and turn the metal handle until it clicks. The room is getting very warm now. You take off your heavy wool coat and hang it on a wooden peg near the door. The coat is damp from the snow, and it starts to give off a little bit of steam as the warmth of the room reaches it. You stand there in your shirt sleeves, feeling the air move against your skin. It is a wonderful feeling. Just 30 minutes ago, you were shivering in a whiteout. Now, you are in a room that feels as warm as a summer afternoon. You look at the pile of hay logs remaining in the corner. You have hundreds of them stacked up. You spent weeks cutting the tall bluestem grass with a scythe at a long curved blade on a wooden handle. Then you had to let it dry in the sun, turning it over with a wooden rake so it wouldn't rot. Finally, the whole family sat together to do the twisting. It was a time for telling stories and singing songs. Every log in that pile represents a story or a laugh. As you burn them tonight, you are not just burning grass. You are burning the work and the memories of the whole year. The heat from the hay is different from the heat of the chips. It is sharper and more intense. You can feel it deep in your bones. It makes the muscles in your back relax. You notice that the frost on the window is starting to melt at the edges. Small drops of water are running down the glass, clearing a tiny path so you can see the dark world outside. But you don't want to look out there. You want to stay right here, in the circle of light. You pick up a small broom made of bundled twigs and sweep a few stray pieces of dry grass back toward the stove. You like to keep the dirt floor clean. Even though it is made of earth, you take pride in its smoothness. You think about how lucky you are to have such a good crop of hay this year. In years of drought, the grass stays short and thin, and the winter is much harder. But this year, the grass was tall and thick. You have enough fuel to keep this stove hot until the first flowers of spring appear. You reach out and touch the black stovepipe. You only touch it for a tiny second because it is very hot. This pipe is what keeps the air in the house safe. It carries all the smoke away, leaving only the heat behind. You look up to where the pipe goes through the roof. You have a thimble, there a special metal ring that keeps the hot pipe from touching the dry grass and poles of the ceiling. It is a small detail, but it keeps the house from catching fire. The room is now so warm that you feel a little bit sleepy. The night shift is moving into its quietest phase. You have fed the stove, and now the stove is feeding you. You feel a deep sense of peace. The hay logs are doing their job, turning the wild grass of the prairie into the comfort of a home. You are ready for a meal. You are ready to sit down and enjoy the warmth you have created. The blizzard can scream all it wants. You have a mountain of twisted hay and a heart full of fire. The warmth in the room is now thick and comforting, like a heavy wool blanket draped over your shoulders. Your stomach lets out a quiet growl, reminding you that you haven't eaten since the sun was high in the sky. It is time for a simple meal. In the 1880s on the prairie, dinner was not a fancy affair with many courses. It was about filling your belly with something hot and solid to help your body fight the cold through the long night. You move toward the small wooden table near the stove. A simple historical fact about the sodbuster diet is that it relied heavily on corn. Corn was easy to grow, easy to store, and very cheap. Most families had a large sack of cornmeal, which is just dried corn ground into a coarse yellow flour sitting in the corner of the house. You take a small tin pot and fill it with water from a large ceramic jug. You place the pot directly onto one of the hot metal circles on top of the stove. Within minutes, you hear the water beginning to whisper, then hiss, and finally break into a cheerful bubble. You reach into the cornmeal sack and take a handful of the yellow flour. It feels slightly gritty between your fingers, like very fine sand. You stir it into the boiling water with a wooden spoon. This is how you make corn mush. You have to stir it constantly so it doesn't stick to the bottom of the pot and burn. As the meal soaks up the water, it thickens into a heavy golden porridge. The smell is wonderful. It smells like toasted grain and sweet fields. It is a humble smell, But in this warm room with a blizzard outside, it smells better than a feast in a palace. A specific microhistory detail of your meal is the spider. This isn't a bug, but a type of cast iron frying pan with 3 long legs. It was designed to sit right in the hot coals of a fire, but you use a flat-bottomed version on top of your stove. You put a tiny bit of salt pork, which is pig fat preserved in salt, into the pan. It begins to sizzle and pop, filling the air with a salty, smoky scent. You will pour your corn mush over a piece of this fried pork to give it a bit of extra flavor and strength. You stand by the stove, stirring your pot. The heat from the iron is making your face feel flushed and warm. You notice how the steam from the pot rises up and vanishes into the shadows of the ceiling. Everything in your life right now is focused on this one small circle of heat. The corn, the water, the salt, and the fire. It is all you need. You don't miss the shops or the busy streets of the town. There is a deep satisfaction in making your own meal from things you grew and gathered yourself. You stand perfectly still for a moment of reflection. The only sounds are the soft bubble of the mush and the occasional crack of the fire inside the stove. Outside, the wind gives a particularly loud moan, shaking the heavy wooden door in its frame. But in here, the air is so still that the steam from your pot rises in a perfectly straight line. You look at the simple wooden spoon in your hand. It is worn smooth from years of use. You feel a sense of peace that is hard to describe. It is the peace of having enough. You are not rich, and your life is hard. But tonight, you have a warm house, a hot fire, and a full pot. You take the pot off the heat and pour the thick, steaming mush into a wooden bowl. You add the piece of fried salt pork on top. You sit down at the small table, which is just a few boards nailed together. The wood is scarred and stained, but it is solid. You pick up a tin spoon and take your first bite. The mush is very hot, and you have to blow on it gently. It tastes simple and honest. It fills you with a slow, spreading warmth that starts in your chest and moves all the way down to your tired feet. As you eat, you look around your small home. The light from the fire is golden and soft. It catches the edges of the whitewashed walls and the rough texture of the sod ceiling. You see your shadow on the wall, a large dark shape that mimics your every move. You think about how many people in history have sat just like this, eating a simple meal by a fire while a storm raged outside. It is a very old human story. You are just the latest person to tell it. You take a sip of water from your tin mug. The water is cool and clean. You finish every bit of the mush, scraping the bowl until it is clean. You don't waste a single grain. On the prairie, you learn the value of everything. You know exactly how much work went into that handful of cornmeal. The planting, the weeding, the harvesting, and the grinding. Eating it is an act of respect for that work. You feel a deep, heavy tiredness starting to settle over you. It is a good kind of tired. Your belly is full, your skin is warm, and the night shift is moving toward its middle. You look at the empty bowl and the quiet stove. You have taken care of your body, and now your body is ready to rest. But there are still a few more things to do before you can climb under the quilts. You have to prepare for the deepest part of the night, when the fire burns low and the frost grows thick. You stand up and walk back to the stove. You move the empty pot to the back of the cooking surface where it won't burn. You feel the strength returning to your limbs. That simple meal of corn and salt has given you the energy you need to finish the night's preparations. You look at the window, where the frost is now so thick you can't see out at all. It doesn't matter. You know what's out there, and you know what's in here. In here, the world is golden and warm. You walk over to the small window set deep into the thick dirt wall. In a soddy, the windows are like little tunnels because the walls are so wide. You have to lean forward just to reach the glass. The pane is small, no bigger than a book, and the glass is wavy and thick. In the 1880s, glass was very hard to get across the plains. It often arrived in the back of a bumping wagon, wrapped in straw to keep it from breaking. Having a window meant you weren't just living in a dark hole. It meant you could see the world, even when the world was being unkind. Right now, you cannot see the grass or the sky. The glass is covered in a thick layer of white frost. A historical fact about these old windows is that they were not very good at keeping the heat in. The cold from the storm hits the glass on the outside, and the warm, damp air from your breath and your cooking hits it on the inside. This creates ice flowers. You look closely at the patterns. They look like tiny white ferns, stars, and feathers frozen in time. It is nature's own art, drawn by the freezing wind. You reach out and press your warm thumb against the center of the pane. You feel the sharp, biting cold of the glass immediately. It is so cold it feels like it might stick to your skin. You hold it there for a moment, and slowly, the ice begins to melt. A small, clear circle opens up, and a tiny bead of water runs down the frost. You lean in and peer through the little hole you have made. Outside, the world is gone. There is no moon, no stars, and no horizon. There is only a swirling, screaming whiteout. A whiteout is when the snow is falling so fast and the wind is blowing so hard that everything looks like a wall of milk. You can see the snow hitting the glass in tiny, hard grains. It sounds like someone is throwing handfuls of sand against the house. The wind catches the snow and whips it into tall drifts, big piles of snow that look like white waves frozen in the middle of the sea. Some of these drifts are already halfway up your window. A specific microhistory detail of your window is the internal shutter. Because glass is so thin, many settlers used a thick board or a piece of heavy fabric on the inside to help block the cold. You have a small wooden board that fits perfectly into the window frame. You pick it up now. It feels dry and solid. Before you put it in place, you take one last look at the storm. You see a flash of white as a clump of snow is whipped off the roof and tossed into the air. You feel a shiver go down your spine, not from the cold, but from the power of the prairie. You are glad for these 3 feet of dirt. You stand perfectly still for a moment of reflection. The room is silent except for the low, rhythmic thumping of the wind against the side of the house. You realize that you are completely alone in a vast white ocean. If you stepped outside and walked 20 paces, you might never find your way back. But inside this little circle of light, you are the master of your world. The frost on the glass is like a curtain that has been pulled shut for the night. You don't need to see the storm to know it is there. You can feel its strength in the way the air vibrates. You place the wooden shutter into the window frame. It fits with a dull clunk. Immediately the room feels even warmer. You have closed the last eye of the house. Now, the darkness of the night is kept entirely on the outside. You turn away from the window and look back at the room. The fire in the stove is casting long, flickering shadows that dance across the whitewashed walls. The heat is steady and deep. You think about the grass that is being buried out there. The tall blue stem is being flattened by the weight of the snow. The animals you saw earlier are all tucked away, sleeping and waiting. You are doing the same. You are part of the night shift of the earth, staying quiet and staying warm. You don't need to see the morning to know it will come. For now the window is closed, the storm is a distant roar, and your little earth palace is a safe, secret place. You walk back toward the light of the stove, leaving the cold glass behind. You move away from the shuttered window and walk toward the small shelf near your bed. The fire provides a warm orange glow, but it is not enough to read by or to see into the dark corners of the room. It is time to light the lamp. In the 1880s, once the sun went down and the blue norther closed in, light became as precious as food. You reach for your oil lamp, which sits on a small lace doily your sister sent from back east. The lamp is made of thick, clear glass with a heavy base so it won't tip over. It is a simple tool, but it is beautiful. A historical fact about these lamps is that they were a huge improvement over the old candles people used to use. They burned much brighter and lasted a lot longer. You unscrew the metal collar and check the level of the oil. The oil is kerosene, which has a sharp, clean smell that reminds you of a hardware shop. You carefully trim the wick, the flat ribbon of woven cotton that soaks up the oil using a pair of small metal snips. Trimming the wick is important. If it's ragged, the lamp will smoke and turn your white walls black. A specific microhistory detail of your lamp is the chimney. This isn't a chimney for smoke like the one on your stove, but a thin, delicate glass tube that fits over the flame. You pick it up and notice a bit of grey soot on the inside. You take a soft cloth and polish the glass until it is perfectly clear. You want every bit of light to shine through. You strike a match, touch it to the wick, and wait for the flame to grow. Once the wick is burning with a steady, golden light, you carefully lower the glass chimney into place. The flame jumps and steadies itself, protected from the tiny drafts in the room. You turn the small metal knob on the side to adjust the height of the flame. If you turn it too high, the flame becomes yellow and smoky. You find the sweet spot where the light is white and calm. Suddenly, the room opens up. The light reaches into the shadows, showing the textures of the sod walls and the simple wooden furniture. It makes the whitewash sparkle. You carry the lamp to the center table, and the pool of light follows you, making your little house feel like a grand home. You stand perfectly still for a moment of reflection. The lamp makes a very faint humming sound, like a tiny bee. Between that sound and the crackle of the stove, the room feels alive. You look at the flame through the glass. It is a tiny captured sun. You realize how much humans have always needed light to feel safe. Outside, the blizzard is a world of grey and black, but in here, you have mastered the dark. The light reflects off the tin mugs and the wooden spoons, creating little glints of gold. You feel a sense of peace. The night shift is easier when you can see the beauty of your own work. You sit down for a moment in your wooden chair. The lamplight is warm on your hands. You look at the shadows on the wall. They are no longer dancing wildly like they were when only the fire was burning. Now, they are steady and soft. You feel the weight of the day leaving your muscles. The lamp isn't just for seeing, it's for feeling. It tells your brain that the day is done, the chores are finished, and the storm cannot reach you. You are the keeper of the light, and tonight the light is winning. You set the lamp down on the table and walk over to the large wooden chest at the foot of your bed. The air in the room is warm now, but you know that the blue norther is just getting started. When the fire in the stove eventually burns down to low embers in the middle of the night, the temperature inside will drop. To stay warm until the sun comes up, you need your quilts. You run your hand over the top of the chest. It is made of cedar wood, and it has a sweet, spicy smell that keeps the moths away from your precious fabrics. You lift the heavy lid, and the scent of cedar fills the air, mixing with the smell of the kerosene lamp. Inside, the chest is filled with layers of heavy, handmade blankets. In the 1880s, nothing was thrown away. Every scrap of fabric was saved. A historical fact about life on the prairie is that quilts were not just for decoration. They were a record of a family's life. They were made from scrap, which means small pieces of leftover cloth. You see a bit of blue calico from a summer dress, a square of rough grey wool from an old pair of trousers, and a strip of flowered muslin from a baby's bonnet. You reach in and pull out the heaviest quilt. It is a log cabin pattern, which is very popular out here. It is made of many small squares, each with a bright red center to represent the half the fireplace of a hoe. The quilt is thick and heavy because it is filled with batting. This is a micro-history detail. Batting is a thick layer of unspun wool or cotton tucked between the top and bottom layers of the quilt. You can feel the lumps of the wool inside as you squeeze the fabric. It feels solid and reassuring, like a soft shield against the frost. You carry the quilt over to the bed. The bed is simple, made of 4 sturdy wooden posts with a frame of woven ropes. On top of the ropes sits a large mattress stuffed with dried corn husks. As you lay the quilt across the bed, the corn husks make a dry, rustling crinkle sound. It sounds like the wind in a cornfield. You smooth the quilt out with your hands, making sure it covers the edges of the bed. The weight of the fabric is significant. When you lie under 3 or 4 of these, it feels like the bed is giving you a giant, warm hug. You stand perfectly still for a moment of reflection. The room is bathed in the soft golden light of the lamp. You look at the different colors in the quilt. You remember your mother sitting by a similar stove, her needle moving quickly in and out of the fabric. You realize that these quilts are more than just blankets. They are made of the clothes your family wore while they worked, played, and lived. In a way, your whole history is covering your bed tonight. You feel a sense of connection to the people who made these for you. You are not alone in the storm. You are wrapped in the work and love of your family. You reach back into the chest and pull out a second quilt, then a third. You stack them high on the bed. You know that by 3 o'clock in the morning, the thick dirt walls will be the only thing between you and a world that is 30 degrees below zero. You want to be ready. You touch the surface of the top quilt, a Star of Bethlehem design with many points. The fabric is cool to the touch now, but soon it will be holding in your body's own heat. You feel a deep sense of preparation. The night shift is about making sure you have everything you need before the darkness gets too deep. You are ready for the long, cold sleep. The fire is doing its job well, but there is a special kind of cold that crawls along the floor of a soddy. Even with the thickest walls and the best stove, the dirt under your feet stays chilly. To fight this, you need a trick that people have used for hundreds of years. You walk over to the corner of the room and pick up 2 large, heavy bricks. These are not made of sod like your house. They are made of hard, red clay. They were brought here with a wagon, and they are very precious to you. A simple historical fact about life in the 1880s is that people did not have rubber hot water bottles like we have today. Instead, they used bed warmers. These were often heavy things made of stone, iron, or clay. Because a brick is very dense, which means it is packed very tight, it can hold on to heat for a long time. If you get a brick very hot, it will stay warm for hours, even after the fire in the stove has gone out. It acts like a little battery for heat, saving the warmth of the fire so you can use it later. You carry the bricks to the stove. They are cold and heavy, and they make your arm muscles pull. You place them carefully on the flat metal top of the stove, right next to where the corn mush was bubbling earlier. You hear a tiny clink as the clay touches the iron. You move them close to the black stovepipe, where the heat is the strongest. Now you must be patient. You cannot rush a brick. It takes time for the heat to soak all the way through to the center of the clay. As you wait, you look at the bricks. They are a dusty red color, with little chips and scratches on the edges from years of use. You notice how the heat starts to change them. They don't move or change shape, but they start to give off a very faint dry smell. It is the smell of warm earth and old dust. It is a very clean, comforting smell. You hold your hand a few inches above them. You can feel the heat rising off the red clay in invisible waves. It feels like the warmth of a summer pavement under your bare feet. A specific microhistory detail of this night shift core is the flannel wrap. You cannot just put a hot brick into your bed. It would be so hot that it might scorch your quilts or even burn your skin. You have two long pieces of old grey flannel fabric that you saved from a worn-out shirt. You lay these pieces of cloth on the table, smoothing them out with your palms. The flannel is soft and fuzzy, and it feels nice against your skin. This fabric will act as a shield, letting the heat through slowly so it lasts all night. You use a pair of heavy leather gloves to touch the bricks. You have to be very careful now. The bricks have been sitting on the stove for a long time, and they are hot enough to sizzle if a drop of water hit them. You lift the first brick. It feels much heavier now that it is full of heat. You place it in the center of the flannel cloth and begin to fold the fabric over it. You tuck the ends in tight, making a neat little bundle. It looks like a small, warm loaf of bread. You stand perfectly still for a moment of reflection. The room is very quiet. The only sound is the soft thump of the wind outside and the occasional pop from the fire. You look at the two bundles on the table. In the golden light of the lamp, they look very simple, but you know that these two bricks are the difference between a restless cold night and a deep, peaceful sleep. You feel a sense of wonder at how such a basic thing, a piece of baked clay, can be so important. It is a reminder that out here, the simplest tools are often the best ones. You feel very prepared and very safe. You pick up the bundles. Even through the thick flannel and your gloves, you can feel the intense heat of the bricks. It is a deep, solid warmth that goes right through to your bones. You carry them over to the bed, walking softly on the hard dirt floor. You pull back the heavy layers of quilts, exposing the cool surface of the mattress. You place the bricks right at the very bottom of the bed, where your feet will be. You can already feel the heat starting to move into the blankets. You think about all the other families out on the prairie doing this same thing tonight. You imagine thousands of red bricks sitting on thousands of iron stoves, soaking up the heat of the buffalo chips and the twisted hay. It is a quiet, secret tradition of the plains. It is how you survive the blue norther. You are part of a great circle of people who know the value of a warm stone on a freezing night. You smooth the quilts back down over the bricks. The bed looks lumpy at the end now, but that doesn't matter. You know that when you finally climb under those covers, your feet will find a pocket of perfect, toasted warmth. The cold of the storm can try to get in through the window or under the door, but it cannot reach you under the weight of those quilts. You have captured the fire and hidden it in the clay. You walk back to the stove to check the fire one last time. The bricks have done their job, and now they are waiting for you. You feel a sense of completion. The night shift has many steps, and you have finished another one. Your house is warm, your belly is full, and your bed is heating up. You look at your gloves, now warm from the bricks, and you feel a deep sense of gratitude for these simple things. You are ready to move closer to the end of your watch. The long white night is half over, and you are winning the battle against the cold. You take a seat on your small wooden stool and lean your back against the thick sod wall. You close your eyes for a moment, and that is when you notice it. The silence. It is not the kind of silence you find in a wooden house, where the boards are always creaking and the wind whistles through the tiny gaps in the walls. This is the silence of the earth itself. Because your walls are 3 feet of solid dirt, they act like a giant sponge for sound. They soak up the roar of the wind and the hiss of the snow, until all that is left is a deep, heavy stillness. A simple historical fact about sod houses is that they were some of the quietest homes ever built. While people in wooden cabins felt like they were living inside a drum during a storm, the sodbusters lived in a world of peace. This silence was one of the few luxuries of the prairie. It made the small home feel like a cathedral or a secret cave. Even when a blue norther was strong enough to knock over a wagon outside, a person inside a soddy could hear the sound of a single pin dropping on the floor. You listen to the fire. It is no longer roaring. It has settled into a soft, steady hum. The buffalo chips are glowing like little red jewels, and the hay logs have turned into delicate white skeletons of ash. Every few minutes, you hear a tiny pop or a soft thud as the fuel settles down in the iron box. These are the only sounds in your world. You realize that you can no longer hear the wind. You know it is out. There you can see the heavy wooden door vibrate just a tiny bit in its frame, but the sound cannot get through the earth. It is as if the storm has been muted by a giant hand. A specific micro-history detail of this silence is the sod crush. Sometimes, when the ground is freezing very hard and the weight of the snow on the roof is very heavy, the house makes a deep, low groan. It is not a scary sound, it is just the sound of the earth settling into place. You hear one now, a long, slow creak from the cedar poles above your head. It sounds like a large ship moving on the water. It reminds you that the house is a living thing, holding up the weight of the world to keep you safe. You stand perfectly still for a moment of reflection. In this deep quiet, you can hear the sound of your own life. You hear the soft tick-tick of your heartbeat in your ears. You hear the rustle of your wool shirt as you breathe. You feel a sense of calm that you don't often find during the busy day. Out here on the plains, life is usually very loud. The wind, the cows, the clatter of tools. But tonight, the night shift has given you a gift of stillness. You feel like you are the only person left in the world, tucked away in a warm secret pocket of the planet. You look at the lamplight reflecting on the whitewashed walls. The silence makes the light seem brighter, as if the quiet is a physical thing you can see. You think about how people in the big cities would feel if they were here. They are used to the sound of horses on the pavement and the shouting of neighbors. They might find this silence scary, but to you, it is a friend. It tells you that your walls are strong. It tells you that the storm has lost its voice. You take a long, slow breath and let it out, watching the way the lamp flame stays perfectly still in the calm air. The world is at peace, and so are you. The deep silence of the house makes you feel a little thirsty. The air near the stove is warm and dry, and the smell of the burning hay and buffalo chips is pleasant, but thick. You decide to make a cup of tea. In the 1880s, real tea from China or India was a very special treat. It was expensive and had to be bought at the general store in town, which is a long day's ride away. Many families on the prairie saved their real tea for Sundays or for when a visitor stopped by. For a regular night like this, you often make prairie tea from things you find growing in the grass. A simple historical fact about these sodbuster drinks is that people were very clever at finding flavors in the wild. You reach for a small tin on your shelf. Inside are dried leaves of wild mint and rose ships that you gathered back in the late summer. You also have some roasted barley, which some people used to make a drink that tasted a bit like coffee. Tonight you choose the mint. It has a sharp, clean scent that cuts through the heavy air of the room. You take your small tin mug. It is a simple cup made of grey metal with a sturdy handle and fill it with water from the kettle sitting on the stove. You drop the dried leaves into the hot water. Immediately, the water begins to change colour, turning a soft, pale green. A specific micro-history detail of your tea making is the infuser. You don't have a fancy silver ball to hold the leaves, so you use a small piece of clean muslin cloth tied with a bit of string. This keeps the leaves from floating into your mouth while you drink. You watch as the steam rises from the mug, swirling in the golden light of the kerosene lamp. The smell of the mint is wonderful. It reminds you of the cool creek bed where you found it, far away from the frozen white world outside. You take the mug over to your chair and hold it with both hands. The tin is very hot, so you have to be careful. You let the heat soak into your palms, feeling it move up your arms. This is one of the best parts of the night. You aren't working now, you are just sitting and reflecting. You take a small sip. The tea is hot and refreshing. It tastes like the earth and the sun. It makes your throat feel warm and your chest feel light. You feel the last of the day's tension leaving your shoulders as you sit in the quiet. You stand perfectly still for a moment of reflection. The room is perfectly still. You look at the steam rising from your cup. It twists and turns in the air, creating tiny shapes before it vanishes. You realize that this moment is a small victory. Outside, the storm is trying to freeze everything it touches. It is trying to turn the world into a block of ice. But here you are, sitting in a warm room, drinking a hot cup of tea made from summer leaves. You have kept the warmth of the summer alive in the middle of a blizzard. You feel a deep sense of contentment. The night shift is not just about survival. It is about finding these small moments of peace and comfort in the middle of the wild. You take another sip of your tea, feeling the warmth spread all the way down to your toes. You look at the stove, which is still glowing softly. You look at the quilts waiting on your bed. You have everything you need. The tea is almost gone, and you feel a gentle sleepiness starting to pull at your eyelids. You're ready for the next step. You are ready to prepare your bed and finally close your eyes. But for now, you just enjoy the last few drops of the mint, the warmth of the tin in your hands, and the beautiful, heavy silence of your home under the earth. You finish the last of your tea and set the tin mug down on the table with a soft clink. The room is now as warm as it will ever be. You can feel the heat radiating from the iron stove, and the air is thick and comfortable. It is time to turn your attention to the bed. In a soddy, the bed is not just a place to sleep. It is your final fortress against the night. You walk over to the corner where your bed sits, tucked against the thickest part of the sod wall. A simple historical fact about beds in the 1880s is that they were often rope beds. Instead of metal springs or a solid wooden base, the frame was held together by a long, thick rope made of hemp or jute. This rope was woven back and forth across the frame in a crisscross pattern. Like a giant net, it was this rope that held up your mattress. Over time, the rope would stretch and sag, making the bed feel like a hammock. To keep the bed firm and comfortable, you had to tighten the ropes every few weeks. This is where the old saying, "sweep tight," comes from. It was a wish that your bed ropes would stay tight and keep you off the floor. You reach down and touch the side of the mattress. It is a large, heavy bag made of striped ticking fabric, which is a very strong and tightly woven cloth. Inside, it is stuffed with dried corn husks. You remember the sound of the harvest, the tearing of the husks from the golden ears of corn. You spent hours shredding those husks into thin strips so they would be softer to lie on. As you press your hand into the mattress, it makes a loud, dry crackle crunch sound. It is a familiar, homely sound. You spend a moment fluffing the mattress, shaking it and smoothing out the lumps so it is even and welcoming. A specific microhistory detail of your bed is the bed wrench. This is a heavy wooden tool with two prongs on one end and a handle on the other. You keep it under the bed for when the ropes get loose. You don't need it tonight, but you see it peeking out from the shadows. You also notice the dust ruffle, a simple piece of fabric that hangs down from the frame to the dirt floor. It isn't just for decoration. Its job is to keep the cold drafts that crawl along the floor from getting under your blankets. Every little thing in this house has a job to do. You begin to lay out the first layer of bedding. You start with a heavy sheet made of flannel-wrapped, which is a cotton fabric that has been brushed until it is fuzzy and soft. It doesn't feel cold against your skin like a regular linen sheet would. You pull it tight over the rustling corn husks, tucking the corners in deep. Then you reach for the stack of quilts you prepared earlier. You take the first one, the heavy wool one, with the grey and blue squares. You lay it down carefully, smoothing out the wrinkles with your palms. You can feel the weight of it. It feels like a solid thing, a heavy shield that you are building piece by piece. You stand perfectly still for a moment of reflection. The lamplight is dimming just a little as the oil burns low and the shadows on the wall are soft. You look at the bed, now half made. You realize that you have spent your whole life making things: the house, the food, the fuel, and now the bed. There is a great deal of pride in knowing that your own hands have provided everything you see. In the silence, you feel the vastness of the prairie outside. But here, the world is only 6 feet long and 4 feet wide. It is your space. It is your pace. It is your pace. You feel the deep, quiet rhythm of the night, and you are ready to be part of it. You add the second quilt, the log cabin pattern you looked at earlier. You make sure the bright red centers of the squares are lined up. This quilt is softer than the wool one, and it traps a layer of air between the fabrics. This is the secret to staying warm. It's not just the fabric, but the air that the fabric holds still. You think about how many hours of sewing went into this one blanket. Every stitch was a moment of someone's life, and now all those moments are gathered here to keep you safe from the blue norther. You look at the pillow. It is also stuffed with shredded corn husks. though you have added a few handfuls of soft down feathers from your chickens to make it kinder to your head. You give it a firm pat. The bed is looking taller now, a mountain of fabric and husks. It looks like the most comfortable place in the world. You can feel the warmth from the heated bricks at the foot of the bed starting to seep upward through the layers. It makes the air around the bed smell slightly of warm wool and clean cotton. You take a step back and look at your work. The bed is ready. The night shift is almost at its end. You have turned a pile of grass and a bag of husks into a place of rest. You feel a wave of sleepiness wash over you, a heavy, gentle feeling that makes your limbs feel slow. You are ready to stop being the watchman and start being the sleeper. You have done your duty to the house, the animals, and the fire. Now the house will do its duty to you. You look at the soft quilted surface one last time, feeling the promise of the long, quiet sleep that is waiting for you. You walk over to the table where the two flannel-wrapped bundles are waiting. The heat coming from them is so strong, it makes the air above them shimmer. These are your heated bricks, the final pieces of the puzzle for a warm night. In the 1880s, the night shift meant thinking ahead. You knew that by the time the clock struck 3 in the morning, the fire would be nothing but a few glowing eyes in the dark. Without these stones, the chill of the prairie would find its way under your covers. A simple historical fact about these heated stones is that they were often called foot warmers. While some wealthy people in the cities had fancy metal boxes filled with hot coals, the families on the plains relied on the honest weight of a clay brick or a smooth river stone. A stone is a piece of the earth, just like your house. It knows how to hold on to the sun's heat. By placing it on the stove, you have tricked the stone into thinking it is a hot July afternoon. Now, it will carry that summer heat into the heart of your winter bed. You pick up the first bundle. Even through your thick woolen socks, which you were using as mittens, the heat is intense. It is a deep soaking heat that feels like it goes right through your skin and into your bones. You carry it carefully to the bed. A specific microhistory detail you remember is the stone check. Before you tuck the brick in, you hold it close to your cheek for just a second. If the heat feels sharp, it is too hot and might scorch the sheets. If it feels like a soft, heavy weight of warmth, it is just right. This one is perfect. You lift the edge of the heavy quilts at the very foot of the bed. You slide the first brick deep inside, right where your toes will rest. Then you go back for the second one and place it right next to the first. You can feel the warmth starting to fill the small space between the sheets. It creates a little oven of heat at the bottom of the bed. You smooth the quilt back down, trapping that warmth inside. You know that when you finally climb in, it will feel like stepping into a warm bath. You stand perfectly still for a moment of reflection. The room is very dim now, as the lamp is starting to flicker. The only sound is the rustle of the corn husks in your mattress as the bed settles under the weight of the bricks. You look at the bed and feel a sense of deep satisfaction. You have used the fire to heat the earth, and now that earth will keep you warm. It is a simple, beautiful cycle. You feel a connection to the ground beneath your feet and the walls around your head. Everything is working together to protect you. In this quiet moment, you feel completely prepared for whatever the storm brings. You run your hand over the top quilt one last time. You can feel the heat from the bricks through all those layers of fabric. It is a steady, pulsing warmth. It makes you think of the sun hitting the dark soil of your fields in the springtime. You realize that out here, you have to be your own sun. You have to capture the heat and move it to where you need it most. You have done your work well. The bricks are in place, the quilts are heavy, and the night shift is moving into the time of rest. You are ready to let go of the day and trust in the warmth you have made. You stand at the edge of the bed, and the heavy weight of the day finally begins to settle in your shoulders. It is time to climb in. You reach down and pull back the corner of the many quilts, and a puff of warm air hits your face. It is the heat from the bricks trapped and waiting for you. In the 1880s, getting into bed was a carefully timed event. You wanted to do it while the room was still toasted by the fire. But after the bricks had enough time to turn the bottom of the bed into a warm nest, a simple historical fact about sleeping in a soddy is that people often wore nightcaps and long, thick socks to bed. Even with the best fire, the air near the ceiling and the floor could get very chilly by dawn. You pull on a pair of shaggy woolen socks that reach almost to your knees. They were knitted by hand, and the wool still has a bit of the natural oil from the sheep, which helps keep your skin soft and dry. You also put on a soft cotton cap to keep the heat from escaping through the top of your head. You look a bit funny, like a big soft bundle of laundry But you don't mind. Out here, being warm is much more important than looking pretty. You sit on the edge of the bed, and the corn husks beneath you give a loud, welcoming crackle. You swing your legs under the heavy layers of quilts. As your feet move toward the bottom of the bed, they find the two flannel bundles. Oh, the feeling is wonderful. The bricks are hot, but not too hot, and the heat starts to soak into your toes immediately. A specific microhistory detail of this moment is the toe tuck. You use your feet to pull the edges of the bottom sheet tight around the bricks, making sure no cold air can sneak in from the sides. You're building a little wall of heat around your feet that will last until the sun comes up. You lie back and pull the quilts up to your chin. The weight is surprising. You have 4 layers of heavy fabric on top of you, and it feels like a gentle, firm hand pressing you down into the mattress. This weight is good for sleep. It makes your body feel still and safe. You can feel the rustling husks of the mattress shaping themselves to your back. It is not as soft as a feather bed in the city, but it is solid and honest. It smells like dry summer fields and clean cloth. You stand perfectly still for a moment of reflection. Actually, you are not standing, you are lying perfectly still. But the feeling is the same. You listen to the sounds of the house from this new position. From down here, the fire in the stove sounds like a distant, friendly heartbeat. The light from the lamp is casting long, soft shadows across the sod ceiling. You look at the thick walls and realize that you are tucked into a little pocket of the earth. You are underground in your own warm cave. You feel a deep sense of peace. The storm is still screaming outside, but from under these quilts the sound is so far away it could be on another planet. You wiggle your toes against the warm bricks one last time. The heat is moving up your legs now, making your muscles feel heavy and relaxed. You think about the night shift and how it has changed. It started with the cold wind and the heavy chores, then moved to the fire and the meal, and now it has come to this, the quiet, warm safety of your bed. You have done everything right. You have prepared your home, your animals, and yourself. You feel the edge of the quilt against your cheek. It is soft and smells faintly of the cedar chest. You watch the flickering light on the wall and feel your breathing slow down. You are no longer the watchman. You are the guest of the house. The thick dirt walls are standing guard for you. The iron stove is breathing for you. The clay bricks are heating for you. You are part of the prairie, and tonight the prairie is being kind. You close your eyes for a second, feeling the perfect, toasted warmth of your feet, and you know that you have won the battle against the blue norther. You are safe, you are warm, and the long sleep is finally here. You are finally tucked in, and the weight of the quilts is like a deep, heavy sigh. You pull the top edge of the fabric up, so it just touches the tip of your nose. The air in the room is still warm from the stove, but the air under the covers is even better. It is a private world of heat. In the 1880s, once you were under the quilts, you didn't leave until the morning light. The night shift for your body has begun the time when your heart slows down and your mind starts to drift away from the hard work of the prairie. A simple historical fact about sleeping in a soddy is that families often slept in the same room, sometimes even in the same large bed, to share their body heat. On a night like this, with a blue norther screaming outside, every bit of warmth was a treasure. If you had children, they would be tucked in at the other end of the bed, or in a smaller bed made of sod right against the wall. You can hear the soft, rhythmic sounds of your family breathing in the darkness. It is a comforting sound. It tells you that everyone is safe, everyone is dry, and everyone is warm. You feel the heavy weight of the crazy quilt on top. This is a microhistory detail. A crazy quilt was made of irregular scraps of silk, velvet, and wool, all sewn together with beautiful bright stitches. It was often the heaviest blanket because it was made of so many different layers of thick fabric. You can feel the different textures through the sheet, the smoothness of a scrap of ribbon, the roughness of a piece of coat wool. Each piece of fabric holds a little bit of heat, creating a thick barrier that the cold cannot break through. You shift your weight slightly, and the corn husks in the mattress make a long, slow crackle crunch. It is the sound of the bed settling around you. You feel perfectly still. The night shift outside is loud and violent, but in here it is a night of deep, heavy rest. You notice that you can no longer see the stove. The fire has burned down enough that the bright orange glow has turned into a soft pulsing red. The room is getting darker, but the dromist doesn't feel cold. It feels like a thick, velvet curtain that has been drawn shut to keep the world away. You stand perfectly still for a moment of reflection. Even though you are lying down, you feel a sense of standing guard over your own peace. You listen to the house. You hear the tiny tick of the metal stove as it slowly cools. You hear the distant, muffled moan of the wind, which now sounds like it is miles away, instead of just on the other side of the wall. You realize how lucky you are to have this earth around you. A wooden house would be shivering in this wind. A tent would have been blown away hours ago. But you are inside the ground itself. You are part of the hills. You feel a deep animal sense of safety, like a fox in its hole or a bear in its den. Your feet are still pressed against the warm bricks. The heat is steady and sure. It hasn't faded at all. You think about the blue norther and how it is probably burying the door in snow right now. Let it. You have the fire in your stove, the heat in your bricks, and the strength in your walls. You feel your muscles finally letting go of the day. The tension in your neck, the ache in your lower back from lifting the fuel lit, all seems to melt away into the rustling husks of the mattress. You are drifting. The night shift of the watchman is over, and the night shift of the dreamer has begun. You are warm, you are safe, and the blizzard is just a ghost story being told to the thick, silent duh. You lie very still, letting your ears wander through the small room. Now that you are tucked deep under the quilts, the world has become very small. It is just the space inside this one room, and the most important things in that world are the people sleeping near you. In the 1880s, a sod house was usually just one big room. There were no hallways or private bedrooms. Everyone lived, ate, and slept together. On a night like this, with the blizzard trying to turn the world to ice, there is a great comfort in being close to the people you love. A simple historical fact about these prairie homes is that they were very crowded, but that crowd kept everyone alive. A small house is easier to heat than a large one, because the whole family lived in this one space. The heat from the stove reached everyone equally. You can hear the soft, steady sounds of your family now. To your left, you hear the deep, slow breathing of your partner. To the right, in a small bed tucked against the warmest part of the wall, you hear the quiet, whistling breath of your children. It is a peaceful sound, like the tide of the sea coming in and going out. A specific microhistory detail of your sleeping arrangement is the trundle bed. This is a very low bed on small wooden wheels that can be slid underneath the big bed during the day. This saved precious floor space in the small soddy. Every morning you would push the children's bed out of the way so you could walk around the table, and every night you would pull it out and tuck them in. You remember the sound of the small wheels rolling over the hard dirt floor, low, rumbling, grr sound. Now the trundle is pulled out and the children are deep under their own heavy patchwork quilts. You listen to a small cough from one of the little ones, followed by the sound of them turning over. The corn husks in their mattress make a light, rustling sound, like dry leaves. Then everything goes quiet again. You feel a deep sense of responsibility. You are the one who stayed up to feed the stove. You are the one who brought in the buffalo chips and twisted the hay. Because of your night shift, they are sleeping soundly. Their feet are warm, their bellies are full, and they don't even know that the wind is trying to shake the door. You stand perfectly still for a moment of reflection. Even though you are lying down, your mind is alert for just a moment longer. You realize that this is what home really means out here on the plains. It isn't just a building made of dirt, it is the safety of the people inside it. In this deep silence, the breathing of your family is the most beautiful music you have ever heard. It is the sound of life continuing, even when the world outside is cold and dead. You feel a warm glow in your chest that has nothing to do with the stove or the bricks. It is the feeling of being where you belong. The lamp has finally flickered and gone out, leaving the room in a soft grey darkness. The only light comes from the tiny cracks in the stove door, where the last of the embers are glowing a deep dark red. The shadows on the ceiling are gone, replaced by a gentle gloom. You feel your own breath slowing down to match the rhythm of the room. You are all breathing together, one family in one small house, protected by 3 feet of honest earth. The storm can roar and the snow can pile up to the roof, but in here there is only peace. You close your eyes, feeling the warmth of the quilts and the safety of the silence. The room has grown very dark now that the lamp has gone out, but you can still feel the presence of the house all around you. You lie there, staring up at where you know the ceiling to be. In the 1880s, a blizzard like this didn't just bring snow. It brought a weight that most city people could never imagine. A simple historical fact about the Blue Norther is that it could pile snow so high that it completely covered a sod house. Because your home is low to the ground and built into the side of a small rise, the wind uses the house like a ramp. The snow doesn't just hit the walls, it climbs them, piling up until it reaches the roof. You listen closely and you can hear a new sound. It is a very faint, soft hissing sound coming from above your head. It is the sound of thousands of tiny ice crystals sliding across the sod roof. You realize that you are being buried. To some, this might sound scary, but to a person living in a soddy, it is actually a good thing. Snow is a wonderful insulator. Just like the thick dirt walls, a deep layer of snow traps the heat inside. As the blizzard buries your house, it is actually wrapping you in a giant, white, frozen blanket. The deeper the snow gets, the warmer and quieter it becomes inside. A specific microhistory detail of this burial is the chimney sweep. You look toward the corner where the black stovepipe goes through the roof. You can't see it in the dark, but you can hear the wind whistling across the top of the pipe. You have to hope that the wind stays strong enough to keep the snow from covering the opening of the pipe. If the snow blocks the chimney, the smoke from the dying fire would have nowhere to go. Earlier today, you made sure to add an extra length of piper blizzard extension to the top of the chimney to keep it high above the growing drifts. It is another small way you prepared for the night shift. You feel a strange sense of comfort knowing that the world is disappearing outside. You are like a seed deep in the soil, tucked away where the frost cannot bite you. The storm is working hard to hide you, piling up walls of white powder against your door and window. You think about the night shift of the prairie itself. While you sleep, the wind is reshaping the land, turning flat fields into rolling hills of snow. When you wake up, the world will look completely different. But for now, you are safe in your secret, underground room. You stand perfectly still for a moment of reflection. Actually, you are floating in a sea of warmth. You realize that you have a very special kind of safety. Most people live on the world, but tonight you are living in it. You feel the immense weight of the sod roof and the snow above you, but it doesn't feel heavy in a bad way. It feels protective, like a giant hand held over a tiny candle to keep it from blowing out. In this total darkness, you feel a deep connection to the earth. You are part of the quiet, frozen heart of the plains. You are not fighting the storm anymore. You have let the storm wrap you up and keep you warm. The fire gives one last, bright pop, and a tiny flash of orange light reflects off the metal handle of the stove. Then it fades back to a dull, deep red. You feel the warmth of the bricks at your feet, steady and loyal. You feel the weight of the quilts. You feel the soft breathing of your family. You are being looked after by the dirt, the snow, and the work of your own hands. You let your head sink deeper into the corn-husk pillow, feeling the last of your thoughts drift away like the snow on the roof. You are buried in peace. You lie in the velvety dark, your eyes open but seeing nothing. The kerosene lamp has long since died out, and the room is painted in shades of deep shadow. You turn your head slightly toward the center of the room, where the iron stove stands. The bright, dancing flames from earlier are gone. Now there is only a soft, pulsing glow coming from the cracks in the stove door. It looks like the eyes of a sleepy animal watching over you. These are the embers, the final glowing coals of the buffalo chips and the twisted hay. In the 1880s, the night shift of the fire was a very important thing to understand. A simple historical fact is that these embers were the most valuable part of the fire. They don't look like much, but they are incredibly hot. They hold the core of the heat. While the flames are gone, these red jewels of fire can stay hot for many hours. They are what keep the metal of the stove from turning cold. You can hear them shifting inside the firebox, making a tiny metallic clink as they settle into the bed of white ash. A specific microhistory detail you remember is banking the hearth. Before you climbed into bed, you used your small metal shovel to push the glowing coals together into a tight pile and then covered them with a thin layer of ash. This is a clever trick to keep the fire alive. The ash acts like a little blanket for the coals, slowing down the air so they burn very, very slowly. If you bank them correctly, you will find a small glowing heart of fire waiting for you in the morning, ready to start the new day without needing a single match. You watch the red low pulse. It gets a little brighter, then a little dimmer, as if the stove is breathing with you. This soft light reflects off the edge of your tin mug on the table and the corner of the whitewashed wall. It is a very comforting sight. It tells you that the heart of your home is still beating, even though the blue norther is screaming outside and the snow is piling up against the roof. You have a small piece of the sun right there in your room. You stand perfectly still for a moment of reflection. Actually, you are floating in the stillness. You realize that you have a very deep respect for the fire. During the day, it is a tool for cooking and work, but at night, it is a companion. It is the only thing that moves in the silent room. You feel a sense of gratitude for the buffalo chips and the grass that turned into these loyal embers. They are doing the hard work now, so you can rest. You feel the warmth from the bricks at your feet and the warmth from the stove in the air, and you realize that you have successfully moved the heat from the field, through the stove, and into your own body. You feel your eyelids getting very heavy. The red glow of the embers is getting smaller and smaller as you drift. You are not afraid of the dark because you know the fire is there, hidden under its blanket of ash. You are not afraid of the cold because you have built your own world of warmth. The night shift of the watchman is truly over. You have done your part, and now the embers will do theirs. You close your eyes, and the last thing you see in your mind is that soft red glow, a tiny promise of light in the middle of the great white night. You are now in the deepest part of the night. The room is as quiet as it will ever be. In the 1880s, this was known as the dead of night. But in your sod house, it feels like the heart of night. It is the time when the blue norther has done its worst, and the world has become a silent, white desert. You are floating in a state between being awake and being asleep. You are aware of the weight of the quilts, the warmth of the bricks, and the solid presence of the dirt walls. Everything is perfectly still. A simple historical fact about the prairie night is that it lasted much longer than nights do now. Without electricity or streetlights, the darkness was a thick, heavy thing that stayed for 12 or 14 hours. People learned to love the long night. It was the only time they weren't working. Out here, the night shift is about the luxury of doing nothing. It is about letting your body heal and your mind rest. You don't have to worry about the clock. The only clock that matters is the slow cooling of the stove and the rising of the sun. You notice how the air in the room feels. It is not as hot as it was when the hay was burning, but it is sweet. Because the walls are made of earth, they breathe in a way that wood or stone cannot. They keep the air from getting too dry or too stale. You take a slow, deep breath, and you can smell the faint scent of the cedar chest, the dry corn husks, and the very last hint of the mint tea. It is a clean, honest smell. A specific micro-history detail you notice is the frost line. On the very edges of the quilts, where your breath touches the cold air of the room, a tiny bit of white frost has formed on the fabric. It is a small reminder that while you are warm, the winter is still just a few inches away. You feel the stillness of the family around you. No one is moving. Even the cow in the shed next door is likely standing perfectly still, her head low, dreaming of the spring grass. You feel a sense of unity with everything on the plains. You are all part of the same night shift, waiting out the storm. You are not a stranger on the land anymore. You are a part of it. You are tucked into the soil, just like the seeds of the wheat and the roots of the grass. You feel a deep, solid sense of belonging. You stand perfectly still for a moment of reflection. Actually, your mind is standing still. You realize that you are not afraid of the morning. Sometimes people worry about what they will find when they wake up after a blizzard, how much work there will be, how deep the drifts will be. But tonight, those worries are gone. You have done the work. You have built the house. You have gathered the fuel. You have proven that you can survive. In this deep, quiet darkness, you feel a sense of total victory. You have made a home in a place where people said it couldn't be done. You are warm, and that is enough. You feel your body becoming even heavier. The warmth from the bricks has spread through your whole legs, making them feel like they are made of soft lead. You feel the rustling of the mattress beneath you, a gentle sound that seems to be whispering you to sleep. The night shift of the dreamer is taking over completely now. The shadows, the fire, the wind, it all begins to blur together into a soft grey mist. You are safe. You are warm. You are home. You let your last thought drift away like a flake of snow in the wind, and you finally fall into a deep, dreamless sleep. The deep, heavy sleep of the night begins to pull away, like a blanket being slowly folded back. You don't wake up because of a loud noise or a cold draft. You wake up because the light has changed. Even with a wooden shutter over the window and the house buried in snow, you can tell that the sun has returned. In the 1880s, the first morning after a blue norther was a sacred time. It was the moment when you realized you had made it through. A simple historical fact about these mornings is that the world was often completely silent. The wind that had screamed for 10 hours has finally grown tired and gone to sleep. You lie there for a moment, enjoying the last of the warmth in the bed. Your feet find the bricks at the bottom. They are no longer hot, but they are still lukewarm, holding on to the last memory of the stove's fire. You reach up and pull the quilt away from your face. The air in the room is crisp and cold, but it smells incredibly fresh. You sit up, and the corn husks in your mattress give a loud, cheerful crackle. The room is dim, but a soft blue light is leaking in around the edges of the window shutter. You swing your legs out of bed, and your feet hit the hard dirt floor. It is cold, so you quickly step into your heavy leather boots. You walk over to the stove. A specific microhistory detail you look for is the morning spark. You take the small metal shovel and gently pull back the layer of grey ash you laid down last night. There, in the center, is a single glowing red coal. It is small, but it is enough. You drop a few handfuls of dry hay and a couple of small buffalo chips onto the coal. You blow on it gently, a soft, steady breath. A tiny wisp of white smoke rises, then a bright yellow flame jumps up. The fire is back. You feel a surge of energy. The night shift is officially over. You walk to the door and lift the heavy wooden bar. You have to push hard, because a drift of snow has piled up against the outside. With a final shove, the door creaks open. The world outside is a blinding, beautiful white. The sky is a deep, clear blue without a single cloud. The snow is piled high, covering the grass and the fences, making the prairie look like a smooth, frozen ocean. The air is so cold it makes your chest tingle, but it's the most beautiful thing you have ever seen. You see the top of your shed peeking out from a drift, and you hear the cow let out a low, hungry moo. Everything is safe. Everything is new. The sun is rising higher now, turning the white snow into a field of sparkling diamonds. The long dark watch of the night is finished, and the warmth you held so tightly has done its job. You can feel the strength returning to your arms and legs as the house begins to wake up. The smell of the new fire is filling the room, and soon the kettle will be whistling on the stove. You take one last look at the wide, quiet plains. You have lived through the storm, tucked away in the heart of the earth, and you are ready for the bright, cold day ahead. You are safe, you are strong, and you are home. The sun is rising. The gates are opening. The watch has ended.